All right, so we're going deep on cobalt today.
Sounds good.
This one came straight from Wikipedia, right?
Yeah, straight from the wiki page.
And I gotta say, I mean, I think a lot of people, when they think cobalt, they think like that blue color,
That's
like
right, yeah.
that really vibrant blue. But as we were sort of digging into this, it goes way beyond that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's way more than just a pigment.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to cobalt than meets the eye, that's for sure.
For sure. And like the Wikipedia article, honestly, like it's so detailed. It covers everything from how it's made to where it comes from, what it's used for, even like health considerations.
Yep, it's a pretty comprehensive deep dive into cobalt, for sure.
So maybe let's start with the basics then. Like, what is cobalt like in its purest form?
So pure cobalt, its elemental form, the cobalt on the periodic table, it's a hard, shiny metal with a kind of bluish-gray color.
Okay.
And it's actually pretty rare to find it in its pure state,
Right.
just out in the Earth's crust.
Right.
It much prefers to be part of chemical compounds.
I see.
The main exception to this, I think, is some iron alloys that are found in meteorites, like, space rocks.
Oh, wow. Meteorites.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So it has like an extraterrestrial origin story almost.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. So speaking of origins, the name cobalt, it's kind of different.
It is, yeah.
Like it's not like gold or silver, it's got this kind of unique sound to it. Is there like a story behind the name?
Yeah, there is. It actually comes from 16th century German silver miners.
Okay.
They ran into this ore that was really giving them trouble,
Uh-huh.
and they called it cobalt.
Cobalt.
Yeah, which might be related to goblin ore.
Goblin ore. That sounds kind of spooky.
Yeah, a little bit.
So what was so bad about this ore? Like why the goblins?
Well, I mean, first off, it didn't have any of the silver they were looking for.
Oh, so it's like a waste of their time.
Totally. It was a big nuisance.
Okay.
And on top of that, when they tried to smelt it, extract metal by heating it up,
Yeah.
it would release these awful fumes, like super toxic with arsenic in them.
Oh, it's not good.
Not good at all. So not only was it useless, but it was actually dangerous to work with.
So basically a real pain in the neck for those miners.
Pretty much.
And what's funny is they were actually dealing with the source of that blue pigment, but they had no clue.
Right, exactly. They had no idea that cobalt was the key to that color.
Oh, man, that's wild. So when did we actually figure out that cobalt was its own thing, like a unique element?
So cobalt compounds, like we said, they've been used for that blue color for ages, but people thought it was bismuth at first, which, is wrong.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't until around 1735 that a Swedish chemist named Georg Brandt isolated cobalt
Right.
and realized it was something new.
Okay.
And that's kind of a big deal because it was the first new metal discovered since prehistoric times.
Wow, that's incredible. Like all the other metals, like iron and copper, they'd been known forever, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But cobalt, it was like this hidden gem waiting to be found.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that discovery kind of kicked off a whole new chapter in the story of metals.
From goblin ore to groundbreaking discovery, that's quite a turnaround.
It is, yeah.
So that blue color, I mean, we talked about it a bit, but it's got a long history, right?
Oh, yeah, a very long history.
Like we're talking ancient civilizations here, right?
Absolutely. We're talking ancient Egypt, Persian jewelry from like 3000 BC, stuff from Pompeii, even ancient China, the Tang and Ming dynasties.
Wow. So people have been digging this blue for millennia.
Yeah, they really have. And, they were using it to color glass way back in the Bronze Age. There's even evidence from shipwreck from like 1400 BC with blue glass colored by cobalt.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's not just a modern trend, it's like deeply rooted in human history.
Exactly. It's something that has captured people's imaginations for a really long time.
So you mentioned cobalt earlier, the goblin ore. Those poor German miners, they were trying so hard to get silver out of it, and they had no idea they were sitting on a gold mine of blue pigment.
Yeah, I know, right? Talk about irony.
And they ended up producing cobalt-2 oxide, which is blue, without even realizing it.
Yeah, it's funny how things work out sometimes.
Okay, so fast forward a bit.
Right.
How did our understanding of cobalt, and how we used it, how did that change over time?
So in the 19th century, things started to change. We saw the rise of industrial scale production of cobalt blue.
Okay.
And this place in Norway, called Blefaverket, became a major producer of cobalt blue pigment and smalt.
Smalt, what's that?
Oh, it's basically like ground up cobalt colored glass.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they use it as a pigment. And then As new sources of cobalt were found, like in New Caledonia in the mid-1800s, then Canada, and then a really big one in the Congo in the early 1900s, the focus of cobalt mining shifted away from Europe.
So we're following the cobalt wherever it pops up.
Exactly. It's all about supply and demand, right?
Right. Okay, but now, I mean, cobalt is a hot topic, especially with like electric vehicles and all that.
Absolutely. It's huge now.
So what's changed? Like, why is cobalt so important in the 21st century?
Well, the demand for cobalt has just skyrocketed.
Okay.
And a big reason for that is its role in lithium-ion batteries. The ones in our phones, laptops, and of course electric cars.
All right, right.
But it's not just batteries. Cobalt is also super important for high-strength alloys, like the ones used in jet engines.
Oh, wow.
And it acts as a catalyst in a bunch of industrial processes.
So it's like it's gone from being this beautiful color to actually like powering our technology.
Pretty much. Some people even think it's going to be a key factor in the whole competition for renewable energy.
So it's not just about pretty colors anymore.
Not at all.
Okay, so where does all this cobalt come from? Like, where do we find it in nature?
So, on a really basic level, cobalt is formed in supernovae, like when stars explode.
Wow.
But here on Earth, it's actually pretty scarce. It makes up less than like 0.003% of the Earth's crust.
Okay.
And we talk about how it's rarely found in its pure form, right? That's almost always combined with other elements in compounds.
Right, right. So it's not like we're digging up chunks of pure cobalt.
No, not really. It tends to hang out with other metals, especially nickel. They're both often found in meteorites too, although nickel's way more abundant there.
Okay, so if it's mostly in these compounds, what are the main minerals we're talking about? Like the ones that have cobalt in them?
So some of the key ones are cobaltite, which is cobalt, arsenic, and sulfur.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's safflorite, which is cobalt and arsenic, glaucodot with cobalt, iron, arsenic, and sulfur, and scutteridite, which is just cobalt and arsenic.
Okay, that's a lot of arsenic.
Yeah, it does tend to hang out with arsenic quite a bit.
So what's interesting is when these minerals, whether, get exposed to air and stuff, they can actually make these pink minerals.
Pink. Yeah, pink. Erythrite and spherocobaltite.
That's a pretty big contrast from that bluish gray metal.
Yeah, it is. It shows you how versatile cobalt can be.
So how do we actually get usable cobalt from these minerals? The stuff we can use in batteries and all that.
Well, there are some places where cobalt is the main target, like in Morocco.
Okay.
But most of the cobalt we use actually comes as a byproduct of mining for other metals, mainly nickel and copper.
So it's like a bonus prize.
Yeah, kinda. And this is especially true in a place called the Copper Belt, which is in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia.
The DRC, right. We hear a lot about cobalt mining there.
Exactly, and we'll get into that in a bit.
Okay, so the availability of cobalt is kind of tied to the market for nickel and copper.
Right, it's all connected.
And that means things can get a little unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely. Like in 2016, the global production was about 116,000 tons of cobalt, and over half of that came from the DRC.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. And Indonesia is also becoming a big player.
Okay, so the DRC, let's talk about them because they seem to be at the heart of this cobalt story.
Yeah, for sure.
They're like the main supplier, right?
Yeah, they control a huge chunk of the global cobalt production, around 63% at the moment.
And I think I read somewhere that it could go even higher.
Yeah, some predictions say it could go way up.
And there's been a lot of talk about Chinese companies investing in cobalt mining in the DRC. What's the situation there?
So Chinese companies have definitely made a lot of investments, and they have a big stake in the Congolese cobalt industry.
Okay.
And, this has raised some concerns in Western countries who are realizing, hey, we're kind of reliant on this one place for a really important resource.
And especially as cobalt becomes more important for all these, clean energy technologies and stuff.
Exactly. It's definitely a strategic resource.
Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk more about why cobalt is in such high demand these days. We touched on batteries and alloys, but maybe we can go into more detail.
Sure, yeah.
So let's start with alloys. You mentioned super alloys, I think.
Yeah, so super alloys are these special metal mixes that are designed to be super strong and resistant to corrosion, even at crazy high temperatures.
Okay.
And this makes them perfect for things like turbine blades and jet engines and gas turbines.
So basically, when I'm flying, there's probably some cobalt helping to keep the plane in the air.
Most likely, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is. And cobalt alloys are also really good for medical implants like, hip replacements and dental implants.
Oh, right, because they need to last a long time.
Exactly. They have to be able to withstand wear and tear, and they can't corrode inside the body.
And those alloys go back a while, right? Like to the early 1900s.
Yeah, the first cobalt-based superalloys called stellite alloys
Hmm.
were developed around then.
And then there are also the specific alloys for medical implants, like Vitalium.
Right, which is a cobalt chromium molybdenum alloy.
Okay, so jet engines, medical implants, Cobalt's got a pretty impressive resume so
It
far.
does, yeah.
But we can't forget about magnets. Cobalt is in some really powerful magnets right now.
Absolutely. There are these things called alnico magnets, which are made from aluminum, nickel, cobalt, and iron.
Okay.
And they make really strong permanent magnets that are used in all sorts of things like electric motors, sensors, and even MRI machines.
Wow, so it's literally helping us see inside the human body.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And there's also samarium cobalt alloys, which are another type of powerful permanent magnet.
Right, they're used in a bunch of electronic devices.
So cobalt's magnetic properties are like essential for all this technology.
Definitely. And even some of the magnetic alloys used in recording media, like hard disks, have cobalt in them.
Okay, so it's strong, it's heat resistant, it's magnetic. Cobalt's a pretty versatile element.
It really is. But let's not forget about batteries, because that's a huge part of the cobalt story right now.
Right, that's what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, for good reason. Cobalt is a key ingredient in the cathodes of a lot of lithium-ion batteries.
Okay.
Lithium cobalt oxide, or LCO batteries, were some of the first commercially successful lithium-ion batteries, and they've been used in electronics since the 90s.
And that's like everything from smartphones to laptops.
Exactly. And while the electric car industry is looking into batteries with less cobalt or even no cobalt at all, cobalt is still important for a lot of EV battery designs, especially the ones that need high energy density.
It seems like the battery world is changing really fast, though.
It is, yeah.
Like there's this push to reduce reliance on cobalt, probably because of the supply issues and the ethical concerns we talked about.
Right, and we're seeing battery makers reduce the amount of cobalt they use, and there's a ton of research going on to find alternatives.
Like some companies are even talking about making cobalt-free batteries altogether.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot area of research.
And there are already batteries out there that don't use cobalt, like lithium iron phosphate batteries.
Right, and those are actually becoming more popular than the ones with cobalt.
Interesting. So it seems like cobalt's role in batteries might change a lot in the future.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely something to watch.
Okay, moving on from batteries, you mentioned cobalt being used as a catalyst.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
So a catalyst is something that helps a chemical reaction happen faster or more efficiently without being consumed in the process.
Okay.
And cobalt compounds are really good catalysts for a bunch of industrial processes.
Like what?
Well, for instance, cobalt acetate is used to make peat plastic, the stuff they use for water bottles and things.
Oh, wow.
And cobalt carboxylates used to be used as drying agents in paints and varnishes.
Used to be. What happened?
Well, it turns out they can be harmful, so they're being phased out.
Oh, I see.
But cobalt-based catalysts are also important in processes involving carbon monoxide, like making liquid fuels and cleaning up petroleum.
So from plastic bottles to the gas we put in our cars, cobalt's kind of hidden everywhere.
It is, yeah.
And let's not forget about the original use of cobalt. Pigments.
Oh, yeah, those vibrant colors.
Even with all this high-tech stuff, we're still using cobalt to make beautiful pigments.
Definitely. I mean, besides that classic cobalt blue, there's also cerulean blue, different shades of green, and even a cobalt violet.
Okay, I did not know there was a cobalt violet.
Yeah, it's a thing.
And those are all really popular with artists, right?
Yeah, they're known for being really stable and long-lasting, which is important for art.
And of course, cobalt's still used to color glass and ceramics like it has been for thousands of years.
Exactly. It's a tradition that has stood the test of time.
So it's like this ancient technology that's still relevant today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool how that works out.
Now, I remember reading about cobalt being used in some pretty interesting ways with radioactivity.
Right, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so cobalt has this radioisotope called cobalt-60, which is actually really important commercially.
Okay, what makes it so special?
Well, it emits these high-energy gamma rays.
Gamma rays.
Yeah, like the stuff from, comic books and superheroes.
Okay, so it's not quite superpowers, but it's still pretty powerful.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So what do we use cobalt-60 for?
A bunch of things. It's used in radiotherapy, to treat cancer. It's used to sterilize medical equipment, and even food. And it's used in industrial radiography to check for flaws in welds.
Wow, so it's saving lives and making sure things are built properly.
Pretty much. And there's another radioisotope, cobalt-57, that's used in medical diagnostics.
So it's like cobalt's got this whole other side to it, this radioactive side that's doing all this important work.
Yeah, it's a lot more than just that blue pigment.
And I think I also came across something about cobalt being important for living things.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not just about batteries and magnets and stuff.
No, it's actually essential for all animals.
Really?
Yeah, it's the central atom in cobalamin, which is better known as vitamin B12.
Oh, vitamin B12.
Exactly. And vitamin B12 is crucial for a bunch of metabolic processes, like, how our bodies use energy.
Okay, so it's not just about how much we eat, it's also about the stuff that's in our food.
Right. And what's interesting is that only certain bacteria and archaea can actually make vitamin B12.
So where do we get it from?
Well, for animals like cows and sheep, they get it from bacteria in their stomachs.
Okay.
They eat stuff that has cobalt in it, and the bacteria convert that into vitamin B12.
And if they don't get enough cobalt,
Then they can get really sick. There are these conditions called bush sickness in cattle and coast disease in sheep that are caused by cobalt deficiency.
wow, so even tiny amounts of cobalt are super important for the food chain.
Yeah, it's all connected.
So we've talked about all these amazing uses for cobalt, but are there any downsides? Like, is there anything about cobalt that we should be cautious about?
Yeah, there are some things to be aware of. So, while cobalt is essential in small amounts, too much of it can be toxic.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there are workplace safety rules to
Yeah.
protect people who work with cobalt.
Right.
And there have been cases in the past where cobalt caused health problems.
Like what?
Well, in the 1960s, they actually added cobalt to beer foam in Canada.
They added it to beer.
Yeah, I know, crazy, right? But it ended up causing some serious heart problems.
Oh.
Yeah, and cobalt metal is also considered possibly carcinogenic, meaning it might cause cancer,
Okay, that's not good.
and it could irritate the skin and lungs.
So it's like it's this essential element that can be really beneficial, but we also need to be careful with it.
Exactly, it's all about balance.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into cobalt, I think it's safe to say it's a pretty fascinating element.
Oh, absolutely.
It's got this long, colorful history, and it's playing this huge role in technology today, and it's even crucial for life itself.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable element when you think about it.
And I think what's really cool is how we've gone from these miners calling it goblin ore because it was so annoying, to realizing just how versatile and valuable it really is.
It's quite the journey, from annoyance to essential element.
And it makes you realize how much we rely on these seemingly simple things, like elements on the periodic table, to power our world.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder, what's next for cobalt? With the demand for electric cars and renewable energy growing all the time, how will our relationship with cobalt change?
That's a really good question. Like, will we find ways to use it more sustainably? Will we find new alternatives? It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, the future of cobalt is definitely something to keep an eye on.
It is. Well, this has been a really enlightening deep dive.
I agree.
Thanks for taking us through it.
My pleasure.
And thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
See you then.